I have a habit I'm not proud of. Every night, without thinking, I pick up my phone. Not because I need anything, not because I'm bored. Exactly. Just because my hand moves there, before my brain has a chance to weigh in. And I know it's not great. I know it. And yet, it keeps happening.
That's not a willpower problem. That's architecture. And once you understand how habits are actually built in the brain, you stop blaming yourself and start working with the system instead of against it.
Okay, I really need to hear this. So, let's start at the beginning. What is a habit, actually? Like at the brain level?
At the brain level, a habit is a shortcut. The brain is always looking for ways to do things with less energy. And when you repeat a behavior enough times in the same context, the brain starts to automate it. It builds a neural pathway, and the more you use that pathway, the stronger and faster it gets. Eventually, the behavior runs almost on autopilot.
So it's literally physical. Like, the brain changes.
Structurally, yes. This is called neuroplasticity. Your brain physically rewires itself around repeated behavior. Which sounds amazing when you're building good habits, but it works exactly the same way for bad ones. The brain doesn't judge. It just optimizes for repetition.
So, it's not that your brain wants what's good for you. It wants what's familiar.
Exactly. Familiar and low effort. The brain treats a well-worn habit like a highway, fast, smooth, automatic. A new behavior, by contrast, is like a dirt path through a field. Takes effort. Is slow. And if you don't keep walking it, the path disappears.
That's such a clear image. So when I try to replace a bad habit with a good one, I'm basically trying to build a new highway while the old one is still right there, completely open.
And free. And faster. Yes. That's exactly the challenge.
So how long does it actually take to build that new path? Because I've heard the 21-day rule, the 66-day rule. There are so many numbers thrown around.
The honest answer is, it depends. The 21-day rule is a myth. It came from a misread of a plastic surgeon's observation about patients adjusting to new noses, not from habit research. More rigorous studies suggest somewhere between 18 and 254 days, with an average around 66. But that range tells you something important. Complexity matters. Drinking a glass of water in the morning is a very different habit from going for a run. The more cognitively or physically demanding the behavior, the longer the pathway takes to solidify.
That's actually reassuring, in a weird way. Because it means if something isn't sticking after 3 weeks, you haven't failed. You just haven't finished.
Exactly. And that reframe matters more than people think. Most people abandon new habits right at the point where the brain is starting to wire them in, because it still feels like effort, and they interpret that as evidence it's not working.
The habit loop.
I've heard about something called the habit loop. Is that what's driving all of this?
It's the core mechanism, yes. Every habit, good or bad, runs on the same three-part loop. There's a cue, a routine, and a reward. The cue is whatever triggers the behavior. The routine is the behavior itself. And the reward is what the brain gets out of it, usually a feeling. Relief, pleasure, comfort, stimulation.
So with my phone thing, the cue might be what? Lying down in bed.
Probably. Or a moment of stillness. Or a subtle feeling of low-grade anxiety that the phone temporarily quiets. The brain learns. Stillness arrives, pick up phone, anxiety drops. That loop runs a few hundred times and suddenly it's automatic.
And the scary part is the anxiety drop is real. It works. That's why it sticks.
That's exactly why it sticks. The reward has to be real for the loop to form. This is why junk food habits, social media habits, procrastination habits, they all persist. Because they do deliver something. Not what you actually need, but something. And the brain doesn't distinguish between a good reward and a bad one. It just notes. Behavior happened, reward followed, remember this.
So telling yourself just stop isn't going to work because the loop is still intact.
The loop doesn't disappear. That's the part most people don't realize. Once a habit is formed, that neural pathway stays. You can build a stronger competing path, but the old one remains dormant, waiting. This is why people who quit smoking for years can relapse after a single stressful event. The old cue reactivates the old loop.
That's kind of unsettling. Does that mean we're never fully free of a bad habit?
In a neurological sense, the pathway doesn't fully erase. But here's what changes. The competing pathway gets stronger and more automatic over time. So the old loop still exists, but the new one fires faster. The bad habit becomes less available, not deleted. And with enough time and consistency, the new behavior becomes the default, and the old one starts to feel genuinely foreign. That's the goal. Not elimination. Replacement.
How to outsmart it.
Okay, so knowing all this, what do you actually do? If you can't delete the habit, how do you beat it?
You don't fight the loop. You hijack it. The most effective method is called habit substitution. You keep the cue, you keep the reward, but you swap out the routine. You're not fighting your brain, you're redirecting it.
So with the phone, I keep the trigger, which is the stillness or the anxiety, but I replace scrolling with something else that gives a similar feeling of relief.
Right. Maybe it's a few minutes of a specific playlist. Maybe it's a breathing pattern. Something that hits the same reward center. Calm, distraction, a small pleasure, but doesn't cost you the next hour of sleep. The key is that the substitute has to genuinely deliver. You can't swap a real reward for nothing and expect the brain to accept it.
What's the other piece? Because I feel like substitution alone isn't always enough.
Environment design, which we touched on last time, but it's especially critical here. If the cue is always present, the loop will always be available. So you also work on reducing cue exposure. Don't keep the phone on the nightstand. Don't have junk food in the house. Don't open certain apps first thing in the morning. Remove the trigger from the environment where the habit fires, and the loop has nothing to latch onto.
So it's not about being stronger in the moment. It's about setting up the moment differently.
The moment of temptation is the worst time to make a decision. Your willpower is already competing with a deeply wired reward loop. The real decision should happen earlier when you're calm, clear-headed, and not yet triggered.
The identity piece.
We talked about identity last time. Does it come into habits too?
It's inseparable. Most people try to change habits from the outside in. They focus on the behavior, but the most durable habit change happens from the inside out, starting with identity. If you think of yourself as someone who scrolls before bed, substitution is a constant battle. But if you start to genuinely see yourself as someone who protects their sleep, the behavior starts to shift to match that identity. The habit loop is still there, but the identity creates a competing pull.
So the goal isn't just to stop a bad habit. It's to become someone for whom the bad habit doesn't quite fit anymore.
That's a beautiful way to say it. And it's sustainable in a way that willpower-based approaches aren't. Because identity is a story you carry with you everywhere. Willpower runs out. The story doesn't.
But what if the identity shift feels fake at first? Like, I can say I'm someone who protects their sleep, but if I've been scrolling for 5 years, it doesn't feel true yet.
That's the right tension to name. And the answer is, it's supposed to feel fake at first. You're not lying to yourself, you're rehearsing. The identity becomes real through evidence, not through declaration. Every night you put the phone down, you cast a small vote for that new identity. 1 vote doesn't win an election, but 100 votes, 1,000 votes. Eventually the story is no longer a rehearsal. It's just who you are.
Outro.
I feel like I understand my phone habit in a way I didn't before. And weirdly, that makes it feel less shameful and more solvable.
That's exactly the shift. When you understand the mechanism, you stop making it about character. It's not that you're weak. It's that you've been trying to drive against traffic on a neural highway. Work with the architecture, not against it.
Work with the architecture. Okay. Next time we're going to go even deeper into what actually drives us day to day, because it turns out motivation might be the most misunderstood word in self-improvement. Elliot, thank you.
Same. And remember, the goal isn't to be someone who never struggles with bad habits. It's to be someone who knows how to work the system,